Princeton Agility Group meeting, July 31st, in the summer this evening. So we have 5 speakers tonight in lightning round, and we're going to start with a little introductory piece about the Princeton Agility Group. From the sign-up list, I saw that there are approximately 20 people attending for the first time. Princeton Agility was founded by Ken Roberts, and we get together, we discuss various things of software and development and agility and business agility, all kinds of good stuff, as you will hear in the course of the evening. We also have a certain format to this. We'll have a little introductory piece where I will ask, does anybody have a job on offer? You don't have to answer right away. I'll talk a little bit more while you think about it. We also have a kind of support group aspect where we help each other out, and we all get along pretty well. So the major part of the evening will be the lightning round. We have the 5 speakers. Ken posted the list of who's speaking in what order in the chat. If you can see it, that's fine. If you can't see it, please raise your hand or make a note or something so that we can get it fixed up.
Yeah, I'll repost it now.
Okay. Or Ken can repost it. Thank you, Ken. So to get back to the idea of the job function thing, some of us or some number of us might be looking for work. I myself am looking for work, but so we try to help each other out with this. There's a Slack channel where we have a jobs and job seekers category, and if you have something you can post in that, that's extremely helpful. You get a good talent of skillful people to participate. And to maybe help you out with your next project or your next job. Okay.
So my company's hiring, if you want me to talk about that.
Yeah, that'd be great, Doug. Please.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Yeah, so I work for a company called Eigenex. We're a consulting company. We're based in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. We also have an office in DC. And what we primarily focus on are CRM applications like Salesforce, analytics like Tableau, Snowflake, Power BI, and product and portfolio management, PPM. Planning applications is like Microsoft Project, or as much as Planisware is a major product that we support. Most of our jobs are more of a technical nature, but we are looking for good IT and technical consultants that include developers, project managers, scrum masters, and business analysts. But the main jobs that we have posts out there for are like a senior data engineer, data visualization specialist, a business developer in DC, Tableau consultants, and senior Salesforce consultants and developers. So if anyone's interested in any of that, or you think it might be a good fit, feel free to reach out to me. And I can also try to get to the Slack channel to be able to post some of this.
Please do put the reference in the Slack channel. And if you want to post a reference to the maybe the career section of the company on the chat thing, then that would probably be helpful to people that can qualify.
Okay. How do I get to the Slack channel? Is that posted in the chat or something? Or
yeah, it's in the chat.
Okay, great.
Post it.
Yeah, you'll see there's a join.slack.com link in there.
Got it. Yep. I'll copy that.
Yeah, and there's a job and job seekers channel. So
perfect.
Yep.
Thanks.
Okay, let's move along to the introductory part. This is where we go around the room, so to speak, and there are usually 3 items. You say your name, you say your connection to agility or to software development or the job title or whatever you want to say. And the third thing is the icebreaker. I'm going to ask you what your favorite meeting is. People go to meetings all the time. People don't like meetings all the time. people get, figure meetings are part of the friction rather part of the actual facilitation of the job. So I would be interested in knowing what your most favorite meeting type is. I'll start. My name is Peretz Whitman. You can see people call me Perry. I mentioned I was currently looking for work. I do a lot of software quality assurance testing type work. I have a little part-time job at the moment. And my favorite meeting type is code review. Okay. Oh, and the last thing is when you finish, then you pass things on. You pass the thing on to somebody else. So it could be anybody. Like Jane, would you speak up next? Don't forget to unmute. Thank you.
Certainly, Peretz. Hi, thank you for welcoming me. My name is Jane Klein. I am an old colleague of Ken's, which is how, yes, you, which is how I ended up being here. And I am a Overwhelm coach. So I do individual coaching for people who are overwhelmed. And we all know that no one in the Agile world is overwhelmed because everything is planned perfectly. I have a lot of background in project management, and my favorite meeting type is, if I think about it in a lean, I think it's probably a stand-up. I love stand-ups. And I will hand it off to David. Because he's on.
While you were handing off, I forgot to say, I'm very hard of hearing. So I used the captions. And if I miss what you're saying, I'll ask to repeat. I've been trying to keep up. So far, it's been working out well. That's the end of that. Okay, David, take it away. Which David?
Okay, assuming me? All right, I'll go. Thanks, Jane. I'm David Wertheimer. I've been practicing Agile for 25 years or something like that. It's kind of part of who I am at this point. And I really enjoy kind of Agile and Lean and Scrum and XP and all of those things that just make software development much more enjoyable. And my favorite meeting, I don't love meetings in general, but like retrospectives a lot. So I just love that problem solving and ideation kind of stuff that comes out of retros. I need to hand it off. All right, how about you, Joel? You want to go?
Sure. Hi, I'm Joel Foner from the today hot Northeast. In any case, I do a lot of work. I've been in the industry for long enough that I say it's 15 plus years, so as not to scare anybody. I do a variety of straight up Agile work, but a lot of what I've been doing lately is communications, team development, conflict resolution, and keep getting my arm twisted into doing work with folks in their personal lives, because many of the managers, leaders I coach right away start talking about their family life. So there you go. I resisted for years being a life coach, and I'm still not, but there you go. Let's see, what's my favorite kind of a meeting? I'm tempted to give you an improv answer, but I'll give you a real one. My favorite kind of a meeting is anyone that somebody comes away with a big discovery or realization.
Oh, it's not
So
okay, go on. That's fine.
Well, it's a category.
Innovation meeting. Okay.
It's a category. We could. Okay. Let's see. So I think I'll pass to, is it Matt?
Hi there. Thank you, Joel. My name is Matt Nodelman. I'm a Scrum Master Project Manager. I've also been involved in Agile for X number of years. Like Joel, I'm saying 10 plus. For me, the best kind of meeting, and this is more of a format than an actual meeting type. It's any meeting where the team gets to self-organize. That could be a lean coffee. That could be used in maybe a retro, definitely for group discovery, where people show up and just commit the time and discover things about themselves, about the team, about their needs, and just build the agenda from there. I always feel that people get more out of it than, say, the the majority of meetings that we experience where there's a known structure. So I think that free-form exploration is a good factor, and that's why I like a meeting where people get to self-organize.
Handoff?
Handoff. Let's go to, let's see, have we heard from Richard?
You have not, but you
Thank
will.
you.
Hi, I'm
Okay.
Richard Hulse. I'm based in New Zealand, where it is currently a balmy 8 degrees Celsius or 46 Fahrenheit for you folk on the northern continent. I've been doing software stuff since the 90s. I discovered Deming, and I'm forever lean and broken in that regard. I was running a high performance software team in the early 2000s with no stand-ups. Scrum hadn't been invented or codified yet. So we were doing continuous delivery, I think, even before it was again that whole practice had been put out there. And my favorite kind of meeting, because of the Deming influence, is a retrospective. Anything where you're learning and feeding that back into doing stuff better.
Handoff?
Okay, I'm going to hand off to, I'll just quickly scan. How about Lucy?
Lucy, you're on mute.
Lucy, are you willing to play in?
Okay, while Lucy's figuring out how to get off mute, pass it to somebody else, please.
Yeah, let's
let
try
me go.
Fernando. Oh, Dean, there you go. Dean,
Yeah.
go for it. Yep.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Dean Bajanov. I'm Agile project manager, Scrum Master, Agile coach. Have been doing Agile since 2013. Yeah, so a number of years. So my favorite and member of this group since 2019, and my favorite meeting is product demo, because this is where in many cases it there is something good to demonstrate, for team to be proud of, individuals contributors to be proud of, and this is another opportunity to touch base with end users customers, which is very important for Agile. And I'd like to hand it over to Orenthal, would you be, please?
Hi, everyone. I'm Orenthal Hawkins, and you can see by my old background, I was once working for Johnson & Johnson. I have been an Agile coach and Scrum Master for the past 10 years. I got myself started in waterfall project management. My name comes from O.J. Simpson. I was born the year he won the Heisman Trophy. My mom saw it on screen and said she liked that. My dad said, "You're kidding." And that is how every discussion between them went for their 52 years of marriage. I always used to think my parents didn't fight because they figured it all out. They didn't fight because my dad already knew he was going to lose. So, as far as my favorite meeting, I like to think out of the box, and so rather than deal with something that we talk about through our Scrum ceremonies, recently,
It can be any kind of meeting.
So recently, in my organization, what we used to do is we would schedule 30 minutes at the end of the week for the team to just get together and chew the fat. It was a water cooler meeting. Especially given that we were all distributed and we were hybrid and some of us were completely virtual, this was an opportunity for the team to actually talk about anything. And I found that genuine curiosity we would have around each other built into something where we were more easily able to work with each other just because everybody felt seen. And I think that's a thing that when we're trying to do change, when we're trying to do transformation, we forget to often make people feel seen. So,
Hand off,
and
please.
and I am going to hand it off to Ooh, it's a little tough. Let's see. I think almost everybody's gone. Um,
Well, no, we only got a half. We got a few more. Lucy just sent a message. She's having technical issues, so she's gonna listen, not talk. That's fine.
so, Richard, did you go?
How about Jagmohan?
Okay, let's do Jack one.
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Now you have to say if I said your name right.
You absolutely did, sir.
Okay,
Hi,
So-
my name is Jagmohan. I'm based out of Omaha, Nebraska, and I've been a project manager for about 15 years. Started my agile journey with the first transformation at a large fintech, and have been in the agile space ever since. Coming up on 10 plus years now. My favorite kind of meeting is a meeting with the stakeholders or the customer where we actually understand, the team understands what it is that the product owner is trying to say that needed to be developed. Yeah.
okay. Thank you. Would you hand off to somebody else, please?
Yes. Let me just do a quick scan.
Don't think Jennifer's spoken yet.
Has Jennifer already spoken?
Jennifer had issues with audio.
Got it. And maybe we do Joe.
I went earlier.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
sweet.
it's I think Dave, Eric, and Maya are left.
Oh, Dean then.
Dave, Eric, or Maya. Yep,
Dave. Let's go with Dave.
Dave.
Okay, I'll go. Yeah, so I started out as a software developer in Waterfall. I moved on to at some point being a tester. Then I was called to become part of an automated test team. So I got some DevOps experience, and I've been a Scrum Master and then became an Agile coach. But I kind of go back and forth. Whatever I get hired for, I actually do both anyway, because I like helping the organizations. So, but I've worked in just about every part. Been a lead developer, lead test engineer. I functioned as sort of a part-time PM. I have some administrative experience. So,
And your
oh, you
favorite
want to
meeting?
know? You want to know the meeting? What, the favorite meeting?
Yes.
Oh, I mean, to me, like in Scrum, I really believe that all of them are necessary. But I would have to say, if I had to pick something, I like the retros, because I use the retros to also do some teaching. Um, so I use it for a portion of that with fun things like videos and stuff like that. And then the first part of it, we get the work out of the way. So just a simple, kudos, what did we do well? What didn't we do well? Track the action items in Confluence and stuff like that. But then I try to do something fun with videos or training, stuff like that.
That sounds pretty ambitious. You hand off to Eric or to
Yeah,
Mia?
that's good. Let's go ahead and pick Eric. Yep.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right.
Yep.
I'm on a phone. I'm having a little trouble with my camera, so I apologize for that. I have worked in the engineering world for over 10 years now or so. My area is aerospace software testing and verification and validation. So I come from the FAA and the Department of Defense world. And so I've worked on data science projects related to different types of aerospace software, and also operations research related software. And I have used Agile, our teams have used Agile in managing data science projects to keep ourselves on track. So a little bit more informal than a lot of the work that you all have done, probably, since we're engineers doing software, but also kind of systems and kind of aerospace specific projects, but we enjoy our agile approach. And yeah, so, and I would say my favorite type of meeting, I am going to say something different from everyone else. I will try. I actually have a meditation group that I go to, which I really enjoy. And so it's a good counterpoint to the technical work, and nice to just turn off the mind for a little while, or try to turn off the mind a little. You never actually succeed with that. It's we get the monkey mind a lot. So yeah, so I guess Maya is the last person, I think, if I have that right.
Yes, hi. So I wasn't aware we were, sorry, I joined in a little bit late to the meeting because I was my Zoom thing wasn't cooperating. So I wasn't aware we were doing.
Hey, it's just software. What do we expect?
Yeah. So yeah, my name is Maya Solomon. I essentially project manage software implementation projects for supply chain and manufacturing type of environments. I've lost count at this point how many different ERP systems and different implementations for different companies. I've worked on both the internal side of the house for the company itself. I've also done work on the consulting side of the house and transloading or housing for the company. So I basically use, agile methodologies for the SDLC, for the software development life cycle, and manage the project from that sense. I'm a little bit more on the business end. I'm officially, the liaison between the business and IT, but technically speaking, I'm more on the business end, and I work with the developers and the programmers and the functionals to do the actual coding and configurations and things like that. So
Awesome.
I wanted to join in here to listen in and be part of the discussions.
Good, excellent. Do you have a favorite meeting?
Oh, while everyone was talking, I wanted to say my favorite meeting would be a happy hour meeting, but
Entirely acceptable.
We'll go with that.
Awesome.
All right.
And I think I'll go if that's all right.
Okay,
Yep.
so sorry, Ken, do you want to say something else?
Yeah, I'm introducing myself. Ken Roberts.
Oh, good point. Please do.
Yeah, I've been an agility coach, I don't know, 12, 13, 14 years, something like that. Been engaged and involved with Princeton Agility since, actually we started out as Princeton Lean Coffee years ago. It wasn't run by me, it was run by somebody else, but I took it over around 2017, 2018 or so, and been running it since then. A lot of background, a lot of history. The types of gigs I've been doing recently have been anything from psychological safety to, team building to, connecting, helping to shift culture, helping to do change management, that sort of thing. So really a lot of change management coaching. I'm going to go completely off-road and maybe even get a little edgy and say that one of the best meetings I've ever been to has actually been an effective, big asterisk, an effective big room planning. And in particular, where we did the risks and the confirmation vote. And I have a story I can tell where, due to one person throwing a 2 in a confirmation vote, which is like, wait, we need to talk, how we had 7 different release trains worth of the organization shift their plans because one person raised their hand. That was a good day. So I'd have to go with that one.
I hope the one person was properly rewarded.
That was one of my successful coaching things because he was coming to me and saying, I don't know, I shouldn't do this. I don't want to hold up the planning and that kind of stuff. And I said, you have to do it. I will back you 100%. Please raise your hand, give it a 2. I will back you. Just please do it. And it was awesome to see when it happened because all the planning stopped and everybody stopped and listened and they adjusted. It was awesome. And it was, hundreds of people. So saved a lot of money that day too. Anyway, that's me. Okay, Peretz.
Okay, so
This is Doug. I didn't get a chance to go.
Oh no, Doug.
Go, Doug, please. Forgive me. You
No worries. Okay.
Go.
My name is Doug Weiler. I am based outside of Philadelphia. I started as a software developer 29 years ago, and it was always very stressful for me. I worked for Verizon or Bell Atlantic back in the day, and it was waterfall, and it was just stressful. Things never were what the client expected them to be. Our deadlines were always off. It was just terrible. And I got out of software development because of that. I joined Eigenex 11 years ago, and that's when I was able to get into Agile, and we had some great projects. I'm actually consulting at J&J now, and I play a lot of roles: Scrum Master, business analyst with the requirements, and I'm the tester. But our team has been very successful. We have a great collaboration with our client in Belgium. And my favorite meeting is the product backlog grooming session because I feel like we're able to dive through the requirements and really clarify things and get us off to a running start. So it's been very, very rewarding.
Excellent, good. Okay, so we reached the part of the meeting where I think we've got everybody on board. Did I skip anybody? I apologize if I did. Okay, now we're going to start with the presentations. These are 15-minute lightning round talks, and it's usually like 10 minutes worth of the presentation, and that leaves a couple minutes, 3 to 5 minutes for question and answers. And we'll start with Jane. Thank you, Jane.
Okay, thank you very much. I am
It's all
going to,
yours.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. I am going to share my screen. Hope I'm not going to mess that up. And then I'm going to hit my present. And you guys tell me if I did it right or not.
You're doing fine so far.
So far? Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yep,
Yes.
and not your desktop.
All right. I'm doing great then. Yay. So I'm here today to talk about Overwhelm and Agile projects. Overwhelm is, I think it's become a buzzword lately, but everyone has had the one project or the one time where things just didn't go right and they got overwhelmed. And sometimes the entire team is overwhelmed, and sometimes it's 1 or 2 people. It depends and it varies. So because I'm a coach and I help busy professionals stop the overwhelm, it was a great way for me to join 2 things together. I'm kind of qualified in this because I was overwhelmed. I was really overwhelmed. I was in an environment, it was very toxic, and I got overwhelmed. And at the time, I was, I think, program managing the entire e-commerce for IT. And within that, we had some Agile projects. We had some waterfall projects. We had some Wagilefall projects. And a couple hybrid in between there. So I've been involved with a lot of different types of projects and project methodologies. I burned my candle down at both ends, and I was so overwhelmed I didn't realize it. So it took my son, my younger son, I think he was 10 or 12 at the time, to say something to me for me to actually realize that I was overwhelmed, and I was in the world of hurt. I was too busy juggling to even recognize it. So it took a lot of years for me to get out of that environment, for me to get out of overwhelm. And now I go around and I help people with that, because I don't want them to be overwhelmed. I know there's methodologies you can use to help you. So I'm on a mission right now to help all of America stop the overwhelm. So with that said, let's talk about where overwhelm happens and what you can do when you're within an Agile project and the Agile methodology. What are those challenges that you get with that overwhelm? So the first thing that it's just natural, Agile projects really have a rapid pace. They're going fast. Whether you choose to do sprints in 2 weeks, 1 week, 4 weeks, 10 days, I've seen them all. You're going fast. The nature of Agile is to go fast, to keep going and cycling. And because you're going fast, that adds some stress to some people. Some people love that. Other people find it a little challenging. There's always pressure. There's always going to be pressure on people to deliver results. And there's always going to be someone looking over your shoulder for those results. The short iterations just cause you to have overwhelm if you're not careful. So what do you do about that? The first thing I would talk about or think about doing is to break the work down into smaller chunks. We typically normally do that in an Agile project anyway, because you want to make manageable user stories, right? You want to have your user stories very small and manageable. And when you take an epic and you break it down into smaller stories that total into that epic, you take that and you match that up into your map, and now you have smaller work chunks. However, a lot of times people take smaller work chunks and it's broken between multiple sprints. Maybe because you only have the resourcing that you need to be available for that, for part of that, and you can't finish the task within the sprint. Well, then just don't start it. You need to break it into those chunks and keep it within the sprint. As soon as you start spreading between sprints, it causes extra stress and extra heartburn, if you will. You need to prioritize. Part of Agile is always prioritizing. You always need to look and focus and refine and prioritize over and over and over. Make sure you're working on those most valuable tasks. If you're not, and you're working on other things, now you're wasting time or you're wasting resources devoted to things that aren't your priority, and that will impact you, maybe not in this sprint, but in the next one. So there's techniques you can use. Moscow, must have, should have, could have, won't have. I think you've all heard of that before. If you haven't, look it up. It's really cool. It's a great way to say, let me prioritize this and put them in buckets and make sure that we're focusing on the must-haves and then the should-haves. So let's talk about time management. As I look at my clock to see how much time I have left and how much time I've used. So there are some techniques you can use that are very common. People use them in all different industries. Pomodoro is the first one that comes to mind. It's taking and time boxing things so that you have a set beginning and end, almost like the definition of a project. It's a set beginning and end. Well, you need to do your calendar with a set beginning and end. Put specific times every day that is focus work and collaboration. If you have people that are collaborating and you have other people who are trying to focus and they need that person, well, now you've just screwed up their calendar. So as someone who's leading a project, take it and say, hey, look, we're going to have some collaboration time every day. I don't care if it's your stand-up, if it's an additional collaboration time, if maybe certain parts of your sprint, you may want to have more collaboration than other parts. Put it on the calendar, block it off, but make sure that you have focus time and collaboration time, because swapping between the two just causes inefficiencies. And inefficiencies means that you're adding stress to everyone on your team. The whole idea is to not add stress, to take away the stress. Sprint planning. Well, the second word there says be realistic. Realistic. How many people here have ever been realistic about their sprint when they had someone from senior leadership coming in and saying, oh, we got to get this done. We're slipping. We need to show these stakeholders some information. We need to show them stuff. You can't be always realistic. I understand that. But the more you can be realistic about your team and their capacity, what they can and can't do. You know what? You can be really realistic in the first sprint for your testing team. But as the sprints go on and more stuff starts getting done and the stakeholders are throwing stuff back, that testing team starts getting clogged up. Let's be realistic and know, hey, guess what? There's going to be unexpected issues for the testing team. Let's make sure that we allot time for that. Let's make sure we're realistic about what capacity they have in what sprint they're in and what part of the project we're in. Look at your historical data. Don't just look at historical data for this project that you're in. Look at historical data for past projects. What really happens? And let's look at the historical data, not just for the beginning of the sprint, but for the entire sprint, the entire project. The beginning, middle, and end of each sprint, the beginning, middle, and end of each project. Try to look at some of that data, look at what the estimates are, look at what the commitments are, and look at what the reality is. Because you need to plan better, and we need to plan better with the entire team as part of that. You need to be sustainable. So if you're putting a pace on your team that they can do for the first sprint or the sprint that we're suddenly under the wire and it's driving full force and 100 miles an hour, pedal to the metal, you can do that for a short term, but you really can't do that for a long term without really hurting your team. As soon as you start having one person that's doing more overtime than 1 or 2 hours total in the sprint, that's when you're going to start getting overwhelmed. And what happens when someone gets overwhelmed is they aren't working as well. They're not working as efficient. They're not as effective. They're letting things slip. So what does that do to your quality? Down in the toilet. So as the owner of the program or the project, you're running things, you need to make it a sustainable pace. If you're a developer, if you're a tester, if you're not running the project and you find yourself putting in 45, 48, 50 hours a week every week, you need to go and raise that flag. Because if you're not raising the flag and your leaders aren't asking those questions, then there's a disconnect. You need to set boundaries. The team needs to have boundaries. The leader of this team, the coach of this team needs to have those boundaries and they need to set them up and they need to keep within those. You also need to make sure you have all that buffer time for unexpected challenges, stuff that happens. I have raised a hands. I can still see some of these people. How many people have never had a project where stuff happened? I don't see any hands raised. Okay, well, you know what? I've seen stuff happen all the time. I've never had a project that stuff didn't happen. Stuff will always happen. You need to build that in. You need to make sure that you're ready for that. Communication, really important. You need to have streamlined meetings. People don't like meetings. I know we talked about our favorite meeting here, but people really don't like meetings. They just want to get their work done. They don't want to be interrupted by meetings. So reduce your interruptions. Use collaboration times to make sure that you have the right communications going and the right communication tools, whether you're using Slack, Teams, or whatever. Continuous learning. You need to do, everyone loves retrospectives. I just heard it here tonight. Make sure you get your retrospectives done. Make sure you document them so you can go back to them. Identify and address those pain points. Don't just do the retrospective everyone agree that this is a problem and then don't do anything about it. You need to do stuff about it. Encourage sharing within the team. Make sure that everyone in the team knows what's going on in that retrospective and what needs to be changed. Make sure you have strategy to address that. And stakeholders. I don't think I need to say anything else about stakeholders. They are the bane of your existence and the reason you exist all at the same time. Make sure you keep them in your corner. Make sure you train them. Make sure they know what's going on. They make sure they understand how you operate and make sure they cannot change the way you operate. They will try that. That will add stress and overwhelm to your team. Focus on one thing at a time. Limit your work in progress. Use Kanban boards. Find your bottlenecks. Resolve your bottlenecks. These are all basic common things, but they're really important when you're addressing stress in a project. And lastly, maybe not quite lastly, build in your recovery time. Make sure you have recovery time, that slack time. It's really, really, really important. Make sure that your team is getting that rest that they need. Make sure they're taking vacation. Make sure they're taking breaks. Make sure they're not working overtime. So overwhelm, it's an ongoing progress. It comes and goes. It's like a wave that comes and goes at the shore. Sometimes you're overwhelmed, sometimes you're not, especially in a project that is running as an agile project, because everyone has peaks and valleys within the project of where they may have more work to do. So keep it flexible, keep improving on it, and make sure you're being a sustainable work environment. That's all I have. If you need to reach out to me, if you know someone who's overwhelmed, or if you're overwhelmed or colleague, here's my LinkedIn, here's my phone number. I'll take questions if anyone has them. And I think I just kept it under the timing.
Your timing was perfect. You ended with 20 seconds left.
So I didn't really leave myself any time for questions, did I? I'm so sorry.
Well, it was so clear. Nobody had any doubts about what you were saying, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, we can always put questions in the chat as well.
There
right?
you go.
So, yep.
Okie doke. Well, thank you so much. Now I have to
Thank you, Jane.
unshare.
Okay, David.
Yeah. I'm ready to go. Let me share my screen if I can figure out how to do that. There it is. Okay. Can everybody see my screen? Good.
Yes.
So Jane, thanks. That was great. I love the focus time stuff. I think that's just critical to make sure that teams have focus time, flow time to get the work that we're asking to get done. So really appreciate that. I'm going to talk about prompt engineering for large language models and some practical examples too. I really want to focus on some prompt engineering techniques that hopefully you can all use when you're interacting with ChatGPT or another large language model. So I'm worried about time, so I'm just going to skip through some of these slides and keep things moving along. Want to mention briefly the difference between generative AI and large language models. Generative AI is the big concept around AI that can generate text or images or audio and video. That's the OpenAIs and Gemini and Midjourney, Anthropic of the world. And then large language models are kind of a subset, and they're focused on generating human-like text. They're trained on vast data sets. That's what the large part of large language model is. And are used to generate relevant, contextual, and nuanced content. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today, is that large language model piece of the picture. And want to get into prompts and then prompt engineering, so that we have a good understanding of what that is, and then I'll get into the techniques of prompt engineering. So a prompt is any input you provide to a model to get a desired output. Could be something like, write me a short paragraph about Agile software development, generate some HTML code for me, or could be a series of instructions where you say, write a short story about a scientist studying life on Mars, generate some content, and then follow up. And the model is smart enough to remember the context of a scientist studying life on Mars. You can ask a follow-up question about challenges, and it knows that you're talking about the content that it previously generated. And that'll come into play as I get into some of the prompt engineering techniques. So I've come up with the 4 C's of a well-constructed prompt, and that's clarity, context, constraints and instructions, and conciseness. So I'll go through this kind of quickly again. So clarity, clear, unambiguous language that provides the details, but doesn't do much more than that. Keep it simple. So explain the roles of a product owner, scrum master, and development team in Scrum. Include the primary responsibilities of each role and how they interact with one another. Straightforward, no jargon, pretty clear about what you're looking for. And the model should be able to understand that and give you a good response. Context, and this is something that I think is really critical, is providing that extra background information, the context, to help the model understand what you're looking for. So in this example, I'm a project manager at a mid-sized tech company, new to Scrum. Can you explain how to implement Scrum methodology in our organization, considering we have a team of 6 developers and a 6-month project? The root of this is explain how to implement the Scrum methodology, but that added context of me being a project manager at a mid-sized tech company that's new to Scrum, 10 developers, 6 months, those extra bits of context really help the model understand. And when I say understand, I don't know if AI really understands things, but that's the term we use. So it understands what you're looking for and can generate a response that's in line with that. And constraints and instructions are probably your biggest friend when it comes to having an LLM, generate good content for you. I find that LLMs tend to be a little wordy and long-winded. So coming up with constraints is a great way to rein them in a little bit. And you can also, ask for tone and format, word count, and points to avoid or cover. But I very often use the, define the output you want in 1 sentence or 200 words or 3 bullets. But you can also do things like, export a JSON object or some code. So you can give it instructions about how you want the output to be formatted. So in the example I give here, provide a step-by-step guide on how to conduct a sprint retrospective, include at least 3 different techniques for gathering team feedback, limit your response to 300 words. I'm saying, give me a step-by-step guide, include 3 different techniques, limit it to 300 words. So it's really constraining what the LLM can produce and can lead to better responses. And then conciseness. As much as LLMs aren't concise, it's good to have the prompts be concise. Keep it simple, eliminate unnecessary words, and give it a direct kind of prompt. Summarize the key benefits of using Scrum in software development in 150 words. Pretty straight to the point, pretty clear, and succinct. So those are the 4 C's. Now let's get into prompt engineering, and then the fun begins after I go through a little bit of a setup here, and then I'm going to be a little interactive and pull ChatGPT up and show you some techniques, and hopefully you'll learn something from that. So prompt engineering is the practice of designing and refining effective prompts with the goal of generating output that is accurate, relevant, and aligned with users' intentions by leveraging the capabilities of the model. And I think that, understanding that you're leveraging the capabilities of the model is important too, because that's one of the things that if you don't know what the model's capable of doing, then you might not be getting full advantage of the output that you could be getting. And I'll get into that with some of the techniques. So like anything else, prompt engineering is an iterative kind of thing, the kind of plan, do, check, act kind of model. Define your goal, write a prompt, test that prompt, analyze it, and then refine it and repeat until you get the outcome. That's a very common kind of model for prompt engineering and developing prompts that are going to get you the results you're looking for. Okay, now we're going to get into the techniques, and I have a number of them. I don't want to go through this too quickly, but I can stop, and if I don't get to all of them, then that's the way it is. So naive approach is basically what it says. Start with something really simple and just shoot that out, put it in the model and see what you get as a response. And then that's a really great place to start. So I'm going to switch over. Hopefully you see ChatGPT now. And I'm going to put in a really simple prompt. What is Agile software engineering or software development? Gives me a great response: iterative development, respond to change, continuous delivery, retrospectives, all our favorite meetings. And that's, a pretty good response. But let's say, I'm looking at that and say, this doesn't say much about Scrum in there. What can I do to get some more information about Scrum? And one of the ways you can do that is by using the persona pattern. So the persona pattern is instructing the model to act as a particular, or play a particular role or a character, and then provide a response in that persona. So I can now modify that prompt that I put in before and say, as a Scrum Master, explain Agile software development, and put that in. It still gives me, or I hope it gives me, it doesn't always give me the same output, but hopefully gives me, some overview of Agile, but then gets into Scrum, defines Scrum roles, Scrum events, and Scrum artifacts. So that's using the persona pattern, asking it to behave as a Scrum Master and give me a definition, really dramatically changes the response you get from the model. So that's a really great pattern to use, the persona pattern. All right, so general knowledge prompt. As I said, large language models are trained on vast amounts of data, and being trained on vast amounts of data means that they have a good amount of general knowledge, and you can use that to your advantage. And when you're creating a prompt, if you're interested in getting some information, it's a good to go. And rather than going to Google and typing in a search and coming back with 100 pages to browse through, you can just bluntly ask the LLM to give you some general knowledge. So I'm going to switch from Scrum over to climate change, or what are the main causes of climate change, and it can give you pretty quickly the results of greenhouse gas emission, land use changes, agriculture, transportation, all of the factors that lead into climate change. I find it is a great tool to be able to get these general knowledge prompts and use that. I definitely used ChatGPT when I was putting this deck together. I will tell you that nothing that's in the deck was straight copy and paste. I have to edit everything dramatically to kind of be more along what I want to present, but it gives me a good start or helps me with editing. So that's another way you can use it. Now, the interview pattern is really interesting, and this may be an area that people are not as familiar with, but you can instruct the model to ask you questions, and then from those questions you give the answers that it then uses to generate the final response that has that added context of the questions and answers. And it can be really powerful. One of the kind of classic examples of this is a travel agent interview. So I'm going to drop that prompt in. Acting as a travel agent, ask me some questions about the kind of trip I want to take, and and then generate an itinerary for me. So then it'll start by asking me, where do I want to go? And I could put in something like Europe, and then come up with the trip duration, 2 weeks, and go through this whole process. And then at the end, based on that interactive interview session, it's going to be able to come up with a much better recommendation for an itinerary than it would have had I tried to put the prompt in myself. And what does the model need to know? And how do I know what, do I need to be thinking about? And so this interview approach can be really powerful when you're interacting with large language models. How am I doing on time? All right, keep going. Chain of thought. So the chain of thought approach is a guided step-by-step reasoning process where you present a series of prompts to the model to guide it to giving you what you want. Very often I might do this in an interactive way. Well, I'll put in a prompt, see what it comes back with, and then based on that, okay, it's not exactly what I want. Let me modify it or do a follow-on question to see if I can get what I'm looking for. So staying with this climate change theme, what's the greenhouse effect? And then what are the main contributors to, what are the greenhouse gases? I want to dig into that a little more. And it can continue to refine the results based on this you asking it for slightly different information in a chain of thought. So just chaining your thoughts together and using that to guide the responses. So how do these greenhouse gases influence global temperatures is the final prompt. And don't have time to read through all of this, obviously, but you can see it's generating some pretty good content.
Got about a minute left, David.
Yeah, cool. Few shot learning. This is one of my favorites. Few shot learning is when you give the model a question and answer as an example, and then ask a question and have the model respond to your second question in a similar way that your question and answer example was. So one of the typical kind of word math problems that large language models really struggled with a couple of years ago, they're much better at it now. And if you ask a question like, Roger has 5 tennis balls, he buys 2 more cans of tennis balls, each can has 3 tennis balls, you never knew what the model was going to come back with. Was it going to say he had 7 because it's 5 plus 2 more cans? Or was it going to be 8 because he saw the 3 tennis balls? Or what? So giving the example of saying the reasoning of you have 5 balls, 2 cans with 3 tennis balls is 6 tennis balls, the answer is 11. You can then ask it, if I had, cafeteria had 23 apples and used 20 to make lunch and bought 6 more, how many they have? It'll use this similar kind of reasoning process to come up with the right answer.
Okay, David,
I'll leave it there. I'll leave it there.
That's 15 minutes. Right.
Great. I'm done.
Okay, good timing. And
thank you, David.
I guess it's my turn.
Indeed.
Okay,
Right, let me stop sharing. There you go.
Okay. So I'll start sharing. Let's see if I can repeat the success that everybody's had so far. Let's see, where are we at? We're not anywhere. I'll try again. Try this, try this, try this. How about that? Everybody see that?
Yes.
Yep.
All All right, now we have, there we go. Okay. Okay, I'm Peretz Whitman, and I'm talking about leading a meeting with being a facilitator versus a decision maker. So the next 15 minutes, first 8 minutes is the talks, then we'll have a vote, and then the last 7 minutes or so, maybe a little discussion. The talk goes like this. Software development lifecycle has many people, different roles, lots of meetings. We've already discussed this a little bit. This is true for both waterfall traditional and for Agile Scrum. A simple formula is people plus meetings equals software product. We can argue about that later if you like. The more complex, intricate formulation is this, which is the scaled Agile framework, business agility, and you can see all the, I outlined in red, all the different types of people that are there. And I tried to make it a little bigger so that you could read. The ones we've been talking about so far seem to focus on the Agile teams. There was a reference earlier to enterprise architect type stuff, where you set up the big planning and the big meeting, and you work down through the business owners, system architect, release train engineers, those kind of people. People are in roles. The roles come from process. The process depends on some sort of definition. For the sake of this, we're discussing Agile, or actually we're discussing Scrum more likely. People learn the skills, they get hired to do a job, they fill one of these particular roles, and along the way, they actually learn how to facilitate a meeting. So meetings, what are they? They're all, why have meetings? Transmit instructions, decisions, to get agreements. Everybody should be on the same page. What kind of meetings there are? I listed these in the Agile world. There's stand-ups. We've already heard that a lot. Retrospectives, people seem to like that a lot. Couple people like the product backlog review. I like those. There's also project and delivery type meetings where you have requirement. One of my favorites is a kickoff. And I mentioned earlier, code review. The one common element is that they're all facilitated. So the facilitator has, well, according to Scrum Alliance, has good 7 traits. I knocked it down to 4 traits. We already had an example where we prepared the meeting by sending you out the email with the ground rules. We break the ice. We did that by saying what our favorite meetings were. And then the actual meeting starts, where you're discussing whatever it is you need to discuss. The facilitator's role, according to the top 12 facilitation techniques. By this extra, I put the reference in the YouTube thing I took this from. Maintains energy and the flow, orderliness, controls the speaking time, deals with skeptics and troublemakers, and said we might put it in the parking lot and you can take ownership. I always thought that tactic was a very clever one about pushing it back on the skeptic and have him or her deal with it. Anyway, the facilitator concludes the meeting, summary, decisions, more work, whatever it is, and you get to the decision making. Okay, the classic theory is the team decides. That leads you to believe that the 9 people in the Scrum team, or the however many people in the project team, or in the big plan and review, however many teams there are, actually come up with some sense of decision. We'll do this, we won't do that. I use the example of a user story because it seemed to be very handy for this. But the practical reality, based on my experience, was that the decision maker may not necessarily be known or present at the meeting. For example, as somebody mentioned earlier, I think Jay mentioned earlier, if the vice president does not attend the meeting but decides the system shall do something, then that's what the system's doing. Okay, I should put this in the chat. Hold on 1 second. Got a message. Thanks, Ken. Okay, there'll be a slight pause as I stop to share and go over to thing. You're at all disadvantage because I lost track of how many minutes I'm taking. All right, the voting thing is in the chat box. You can go over to Menti and vote. Let's see if I can do it. There, I did it. I didn't open the slide yet. I'm not sure how this thing really works. Okay. Can you see? Let's see. I got to go back to sharing. I did actually try and do this earlier today. Can anybody see? There we go. Oh, you got it. Okay, we had 4 votes. Anybody else? There we go. I like the depends. Excellent. Great. Okay. So now we got, what are we gonna 2? I can't see that. 5, 7, 9. Okay. Anyway, we got the idea. So we got a fair amount of babies on that. That's pretty much what I had to discuss. Let me go back to the slideshow.
Yeah, Peretz, you got about 8 minutes left or so.
Okay, so now I don't have anything better to do than thanks. And now we're just having a discussion about sharing meetings and experiences. Anybody got anything you want to say?
Sure, I'll jump in.
Thanks, Dean.
So I would think, say we have Scrum planning and whatnot, right? And the VP is not there. Well, we continue as with information we have, right? And then in the spirit of agility, responding to changes, right? When new news comes from vice president or whomever, right? Then team readjust, perhaps in the next sprint. So that's the answer. The answer is the team decides with the information it has at hands, and then if new information becomes available, they again decide. That's my.
Well, I guess part of my experience has been that the facilitator has a tendency to control the meeting, and that in itself kind of controls the content. Ken, you want to say something?
I figure maybe we could use like raise hands and that kind of stuff to help in this meeting determine who wants to go next. A couple
Okay.
things I think would be good to play in on this is decision-making authority. Like, it's sometimes helpful to have the teams and the leaders talk about where the authority lies for certain types of decisions. Does it lie with the executive? Does it lie with the director? Does it lie with the teams themselves? And it's a gradation. It's not always clear black and white. Sometimes it's, hey, I want to hear from the team, but I'm going to make the final decision. Other times it might be, hey, I want to give the team input, but they're going to make the final decision, right? Or, this is absolutely what you need to do. AKA, you've got to finish this training, required corporate training by the end of the week, right? That's me telling you you're going to do it, right? Versus, you know what, you have full control. Just tell me what you decide. I trust you. Like, so there's a gradation there. The other thing is in terms of facilitator role, I try to maintain neutrality in there wherever I can and kind of set that up in the beginning. But I like to be really explicit about when I am stepping into the role of a decision maker versus a non-decision maker, right? I may say, okay, I want to take my facilitator off for a second. Let me add some content or some ideas regarding decision making and where I would lean towards this. Okay, I'm done with that. I'm going to put that hat aside and let me put the original facilitator hat back on, just so that everybody knows where I stand. So that's my 2 cents, if that helps.
Okay, I got into, thanks, Ken. That is actually very helpful because I got into this kind of thinking. As you could tell, it's not a complete set of thoughts yet, because I've determined there's a kind of a break between the agile world in the software world and the kind of larger business world where business agility has not yet taken hold, and the idea of transparency and the idea of iteration and the idea of basically conversational, being polite, as I think Jane was mentioning about the idea of avoiding being overwhelmed. There seems to be a breakdown there where I've had the experience where a team will develop a degree of a pattern, get through so many user stories in a particular sprint, deliver a certain amount of product, and this is repeatable. And then along comes somebody who's outside of that line of decision-making from the business side, or more likely from the organizational side, vice president level, saying, you know, we got to show we're just better than everybody else and beat the competition to market or whatever. And he basically throws that away. All of that learned experience gets overwritten by the role power of the organization somehow. And I guess one of the things I know this is kind of expanding from the idea of facilitating or being a scrum master or even an agile coach at some level, but this kind of relationship between the administrative business need or perceived need or created need, whatever, and the ability of the human beings who are actually supposed to do the work hasn't, I don't see a good answer for that one yet.
Yeah, I wonder if any of our more experienced coaches or folks on the phone have anything they want to play in with.
Okay, maybe we'll hear more about it from Joel.
Or whoever.
Or even you.
Not trying to
later in
point
your
a
talk.
finger, but
All right, just because we're authorized 15 minutes doesn't mean I have to take all 15 minutes. I'll give you back 3 minutes on your life.
well, let's see if anybody has an answer first and wants to play in.
Does anybody have anything else to say? I assume
No, I
since nobody.
will, hi, it's Maya. I will touch the fact that, yes, the executive leadership team certainly can drive a lot of those changes or curves in some of the project phases. I usually like to approach it with the sense of, okay, well, in order for us to add this in the scope or curve around that, here's the, additional timeline, here's the additional cost. And if we're okay with that, then we'll take this on and move forward. But I'm usually the one to say, not necessarily no, but to say, okay, well, this is what it's going to cost. This is what it's going to do. Here's the delay in the timeline. It's up to you.
Okay, thank you for that contribution. I did it, and thanks to that comment, I was reminded of the time I was put in the position of being overwhelmed. But as you can gather from my expert sense of facilitation, I don't overwhelm easily. So my wife sometimes says it's because I'm not paying attention, but I don't know if that's entirely true. But I was put in a position where I was the only test guy available for we got to deliver, you got to work all night. I said, no, I don't. I said, we're going to organize this so that each team delivers a particular product for me to test. I will test that. If it fails, you go back and deal with it. I deal with the next team. Everybody gets a little bit, and here's the schedule. It's a little bit like what you were just saying, Maya, that everybody gets a little bit of progress. Everybody can see that go back to the vice president or whoever the person shouting the loudest is and says, that's the best we can do. You just have to live with it. A little bit like getting stuck in a traffic jam. All right, now I've used up all my time, and I guess, Ken, it's your turn. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah. And again, feel free to provide any comments or thoughts in chat as well. Let me go ahead and I guess I'll share a screen, get myself started up here, spin myself up. Gotta make sure I grab the right screen. And wait for the silly window to disappear. Slideshow. Can you folks see my screen?
Yes.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right. I got nothing heavy here today. I'd just like to talk to you today about some interactions with leaders in a company that I worked with. The intent was to build momentum for change experimentation. So these are just simple purchase ideas. There may not be anything new here for many of you. Really, I think the storytelling is what's important. I can tell you what we did was effective. If we have time at the end, I would love to hear what you do with leadership teams that helps them to be effective as well. And feel free to provide comments and everything in chat. Any type of feedback is welcome. So, nice little quote from Theodore Roosevelt: "In any moment of decision, the best thing you can do is the right thing. The next best thing you can do is the wrong thing. And the worst thing you can do is nothing," right? So my point of view is building momentum for work and alignment in a leadership team and helping them to address what is holding them back is more important than picking the right work for them to do. So write down an introduction. Ken Roberts, experienced transformation consultant. I've helped multiple organizations, multiple industries. I've had multiple years, more than 20 years, I won't say how many, in various types of roles, including Agile coach, managers, project manager, software developer, trainer, adjunct professor, a whole bunch of things I've done in my past. So I even used to ride ambulance. So heard Joel mention improv earlier. I actually do some improv as well. Yeah, so let me give you the background. This was a leadership team. It was management and director levels. They had a lot of improvement initiatives on their plate, or a lot of improvement intents on their plate, I guess you could say, without really much action. There was a general feeling among them and their direct reports that progress was not truly being made. So the benefit after the work with them is the leader group started to feel that there were possibilities and momentum where they felt stuck before. In terms of working with that individual group or any group, the approach I take would vary depending upon the team. So the approach I took in this case involved basic team kickoff activities, followed by combining reflection and learnings with the refinement and prioritization activities that we wanted them to do to help get moving. So clearly identifying the environment, what it takes to support it, the goals and the outcomes was the first step. So the challenges that they identified really was the amount of work and process they had. The time together that they had was very limited. So these were leaders that were quite busy. They had a lot on their plates. They had direct people that they were managing. And also, it was one of the situations where people were working together in this leadership group that were never worked together before. So we want to try to make sure that they start to feel connected to each other. So their goals were involving showing forward progress, demonstrable progress on self-sourced improvement, as well as improvement items from teams. I'll go into that a little bit. Breaking down silos between their functional areas, and that's talking about both within the leadership group and outside of it, mostly within it. And at least giving a nod to business value. So in terms of the prioritization, we wanted to make sure that they at least considered that. As a coach going in, there were some possibilities that I saw in terms of more fundamental shifts. So building self-awareness around work and process and alignment concerns, showing them a new way of working. Hopefully that could be sustainable. Maybe new ways of thinking about the challenges, and then helping them to feel the balance between forward movement and the introduction of ideas. So what I mean there is that in the sessions that I had with them, it was really important that they felt forward progress during every session. So while I was trying to introduce ideas into the general realm, into the atmosphere, right? I had to be careful not to get too preachy, too pedantic, or go too deep into any particular topic. So it was more like, let's do a little bit of work. Oh, let me show you something else. Let's do a little bit more work. Hey, consider this. Okay, let's do a little bit more work so that way they could feel there's forward momentum. The other thing in this type of work that was really important is director level buy-in on the approach intent. So it's important that you get the leaders and the stakeholders associated with the group into the conversation early. What I ended up doing with them is actually engaging them with what I plan to do, getting their feedback, and I did adapt and change some things based upon what they said. That allowed them to feel a little bit more ownership about the session so they could help support me in trying to do the work that we were all trying to do. The indirect influence they had on attendees is critical. And, we want to make sure that they've got buy-in so that way they're not headwinds in terms of the work we're trying to do. They also know the dynamics of the attendees better than I ever will, right? So, of course, I also try to make the work as visible as possible using things like Miro to make sure that things were clearly laid out. So balancing the concerns really was about keeping the process lightweight but effective, right? Because again, these folks didn't have a lot of time. So this isn't necessarily the best approach on things, but it is a quick one while honoring intent as closely as I felt was good. And there's no perfect balance to any of this. This is one of those cases where I felt perfection is the enemy of good enough. So over time, more refinement concepts and better approaches can be used if I continue to work with that group. But let me just start with something basic for them to start with, right? Start to build momentum. So, I did a team kickoff. We did some work identification. A lot of the work identification was actually pre-work. Pulled together a list from them that they came up with. And then I also went out to teams that had done some self-assessments and asked them what are the results that they need assistance with management, made sure that we had them aligned and pulled into that. So I just dumped that into a simple Excel spreadsheet. There were about 10 to 15 items that were clearly too much for anybody to work on at one time. I did send the spreadsheet out ahead of time in case people wanted to review it or make some changes or additions, get some feedback. The other thing with this whole thing is making sure that we had the right set of leaders in the room, making sure that we clarified schedule and that I understood who was most important to schedule around to make sure that we had them in the room versus folks that may be a little bit more optional. We had about 3 sessions total. And again, the education was sprinkled throughout. Typical kickoff, clarifying the group is, what the group is and what their purpose was, what the session purpose was. Working agreements, things like FIST of 5, reviewing what collaboration means versus consensus, etc. Covering things, the basic facilitation stuff like the agenda, the hoped for outcomes, having a parking lot action items, all that kind of thing. And then what we did is we took the initiative list in the spreadsheet and we very briefly talked about each one. I had the group pick the top 5 or 6 that they thought were the most important. And then what we did is we had cross-functional pairs be accountable for filling out a mini canvas associated with each one of those initiatives. That allowed them to have better communications, but it also allowed the 2 cross-functional team members to get to know each other, and we start to build connections that way, right? So the canvas included things like what's the title, what's the idea, the problem, or the opportunity, who the canvas was created by, a description, and then anticipated benefits to the organization. Keeping it real simple. I didn't want to do a deep dive because these folks didn't have a lot of time, and asking them to do work between sessions was already a bit of a challenge. So, between the sessions, basically they just had to fill that out, right? I did individual check-ins and coaching to fill in, to see, how's your canvas coming along? Oh, you don't quite understand stuff? Hey, let's set up 10, 15 minutes. I'll take you through it. Or what do you need from me to do to help support you in this, right? To kind of help them feel supported in the whole process. So after this was done during the second session, the improvement items were reviewed by pairs responsible for creating this with a time box. There was an activity to determine both perceived business value and perceived duration and complexity. What I did there was I kind of reused planning poker concepts, again, lightweight, where we did comparative analysis or did comparison using planning poker, not just on things like duration, etc., but also along the business value. So then between the sessions, what we did after they filled that out, because this was the end of the second session, they didn't quite complete all of them, but they did manage to get a proximate business value and a proximate degree of complexity, duration, etc. assigned. Between the sessions, what I did is I took their canvases and I kind of put them on the board, and I created a 2-axis grid with the lowest to highest duration and complexity and the lowest to highest business value, right? As a means to help them visualize what it is that they were talking about and what their ratings were. The guidance was to find something, the highest thing that was the most important, but the least duration or complexity. Think of like cost or delay, right? And we wanted them to take that into account. So there was a lot of negotiation that occurred back and forth. We moved some things around, and finally, which is really what the goal was, to have one and only one item selected. So out of the 15 they originally start with, they came up with their top most important thing. I asked them to fill out the rest of the canvas. We kind of did that collaboratively, which is, what are the key results and how we want to measure them? What are some of the assumptions we have, not just in the what we're asking for, but also in terms of delivery. I also had conversations with them about accountability and, who's going to take the lead on this, who's involved, how are you going to manage the work for this, how are you going to report back to this group, how often are you going to report back? And then also just making sure that all the leaders heard that it was important to prioritize this effort over the remaining improvement items, right? Part of the intent was reducing work in process and have them all focused. So the important thing was to say this is number one. You folks chose it. Let's stick with that decision. I understand you may have other things you're working on, but if it comes to a choice between another improvement item and this improvement item, pick this one first just so that we can get it done and knocked out, right? And I did suggest that they do something similar to this on a quarterly basis. I did introduce other ideas, and we won't have time to go into them here, but what I will do is after the talk is over, I'm going to throw a couple of links in here. Some of the concepts I introduced were things like multiple with work in process versus one piece flow, circles and soup, which has to do with, what amount of direct action control do we have, where do we have influence, and where don't we have influence. And then some eco-cycle planning concepts, which has to do with how much time and effort and things do we have available to make sure that our ideas and experiments come to fruition versus how many things are we holding on to that no longer serve us. So the result is the team picked a primary improvement initiative. They were aligned. They were clear on accountability, and they were able to start building momentum. Some of the side effects were they had a deeper sense of teamwork. They had clarity on the next steps. They had focus. So again, what's important here is building momentum for the work and alignment and leadership team and helping them address what is holding them back is more important than picking the right work. So in doing this type of work, figure out how to build momentum, learn how to adapt to the local conditions, get buy-in from the leaders, keep the process and approach lightweight but effective and collaborative, keep it moving, introduce ideas as you go rather than doing a full training, and then coach and support where needed. So plans are only good intentions unless they immediately degenerate into hard work. That's Peter Drucker. So again, building momentum for work and alignment and leadership team, helping them address what's holding them back is much more important than picking and doing perfection. So that's my presentation. I don't know how helpful it was. It may have been a review for a lot of you folks, but I would love to hear how this landed with you. And I would love to hear other things that you folks have done to help leaders come up with and prioritize the work that they're doing. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Don't be shy.
I think the most important thing is to, get the air cover from the highest level of management that you're working with, or whoever your manager is, because without support, it's very difficult for any type of success. So that's the first thing I try to do. I also try to get them as involved as they will tolerate. I prefer to meet them maybe twice a week to give status and to make sure that the alignment is going. So in other words, their expectations are being met. You're staying on track with what they want versus doing what you think they want. So trying to be as transparent as possible. It always starts out pretty well, I think, if you have them put out an initial email asking them to send an email to the entire organization, asking the organization support for them through you. A nice introductory email goes a long way. And then sort of taking a survey of as is and, taking notes, not necessarily sharing it early, but just taking notes to see where they are, and then trying to get, alignment across whether it's agile release trains or it's, just teams, whatever alignment is probably needed. That's a good place to start, I think, from a high level, if for nothing else than just to show management that you have a plan, basically, because management always wants alignment.
Joel, we don't have much time left. So Joel, what did you want to add?
I'll be really quick. This is another radical one. I actually start management and leadership teams up as a Scrum or Kanban team and don't give them excuse of doing it the crappy way.
I appreciate that, Joel. And yeah, sometimes, depending upon the organization, sometimes I'm with you 100% on it. Other times, I can tell you that it can fall flat on its face if you just can't convince them to engage.
There are some very significant, very consistent failure patterns, and I've now figured out a pattern of what works.
Yeah.
And one of the problems that is really hysterically funny when you try to get managers to do this is many of them have no idea what work they do.
Right.
And so that's
true.
the first hurdle. In any case, I don't want to take more time, but that's, anybody curious, feel free to be in touch.
You make a good point, Joel. Thank you.
Joel, they tell other people what to do.
Right. You try to put a board up on the wall and you say, put your work up there. It's all everybody else's work. So the first step is helping them to understand that they actually do have accountability for work that they do.
Yeah. It's kind of a backdoor way into that.
Yep, totally. Yep. I totally admit that's kind of the way I operate sometimes.
Yep. All right. So I think we have one more session left, right? One more talk left.
Let's move on.
That's you, Joel.
Joel's session. And Joel, your 15 minutes starts now.
Well, soon. Let him get his slides up at least. If he has any.
1 sec.
Oh, okay. We'll give you a minute to put the slides up.
Okay. So I do slides. We'll do it a different way. Nice. But in any case, I'm ready to go.
Sweet.
I have 2 topics because I had no idea what the group was going to have energy about. I'm going to put them in chat. The first one is 3 secrets that turn conflict into collaboration, otherwise known as how many times, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. How many times you've been in a conversation where you might even agree, but it melts down and goes sideways in it anyway. There are lots of actually very concrete ways you can help take most conflicts and have them go poof and go away. So that's A. B is a whole other end of the universe, more of the agile stuff. The really ugly truth about team velocity. And I promise you'll never look at it the same way again. Let's put an A or a B in the chat for which one you want to see. Wait, so there's all kinds of stuff in chat. It's kind of hard to see what the votes are. Okay. Oh, a mix. Okay. But it looks like mostly A. Does a group look like that's roughly the call? I think there's more A's. So let's go with A. So like I said, let's start off and talk about this topic of, conflict. And by the way, conflict, let's take 1 second. What's the difference between conflict and debate? One person sort of give us one sentence on this. What's the difference between conflict and debate? A difference.
Conflict is not healthy, debate is.
Okay. Why is conflict not healthy?
Conflict is a breakdown in communication and loss of trust.
Okay. So you've got conflict that, if we think about conflict as a problem, something's not working right, but why, right? What's going on? There are a few ways to think about this. And I want to start off, and I don't have a lot of time to go into detail, but this concept of story. There's the directly sensed things, the things we see, hear, feel, touch, that stuff. I'm going to assert, and we can talk at another time about proving this, that everything else is a story we make up to understand it. And so, for example, we say, well, that's not true, Joel. Hot and cold are stories. Wherever you live, you think you know what hot and cold are, but hot and cold are completely different on the North Pole than they are in California. So, stories. You can go through most of the world and find out that that's true. And so one of the one of the big things you need to start figuring out if you want to make conflict go away is to understand some of the structural patterns for it. And so one of these structural patterns is what I call a story versus story conflict. Where somebody's saying, my story is better. The problem is that is completely unwinnable, right? Because it's just a story to explain stuff. So if somebody says, for example, no, not that anybody in this group has run into this, Kanban is better. No, Scrum is better. They're both stories. You can't win. The trick is to go back to the objective stuff underneath it, find out if we're even seeing the same thing, because often the things we're talking about are completely different. For example, we talk about, I won't go any further than say politics, right? Most political debate is actually not debate. It's a story versus argument where the stories aren't even talking about the same thing. So once you can recognize these kinds of arguments as structural problems instead of debates, conflict, whatever, you can start to pull it apart and help people get back to having a constructive discussion. By the way, I'm going to leave some time at the end for questions and discussion. So story versus story is one of them. A second one, and this phrase you might remember from Pirates of the Caribbean, maybe. The problem is not the problem. So team gets locked in debate about something, or a team is locked in debate with some external team, or a manager in the team, and this and that. This is like, I don't know if any of you have had kids, like teenagers, the pizza boxes in the sink problem, where they put the pizza box in the sink and you say, please don't do that, right? Please just put it in the trash, or even better, put it out in the garage. And then it happens a second time, you go around it again. The third time, you go around it again. By the 10th time, the problem is not the pizza boxes in the sink. The problem is power, control, autonomy, and who gets to set up the rules, right? So in many ways, that's another structural conflict that it's in plain sight, but we miss it. And so if you can understand which things where the problem's not the problem, the discussion is not actually what the debate is about, that's a second kind of these conflicts that you can actually resolve by better understanding of what you're seeing and noticing. And then there's a third one, which I call a hidden priority conflict. This is one where it seems like we're talking about something. It seems like we're maybe even having an argument about two things. But it's really a prioritization problem. And this often shows up as good, not good, should do, shouldn't do, yes, no. Many of those discussions are actually prioritization discussions, not stories of good and evil as they seem to be in the room, if that makes any sense. So for example, somebody says, we should do this feature. No, we should do that feature. No, we should do this feature. It's much better. No, we should do that feature. More people care about. This is actually a prioritization discussion. It's not a yes-no discussion. And so one of the hidden pieces of, like, defuse this in a second is, instead of yes and no, you start to realize there's something in between, which is not yet. And once you introduce not yet, then people can actually have a productive discussion about priority and sequence instead of arguing about yes and no, which is not the actual problem. The problem is not yes, no, it's prioritization usually. So these are three different hidden in open sight things about how to convert conflict into collaboration. These are some of a large array of things that I work with over. A lot of the work I do is about first noticing better, because once you notice better and ask better questions, then you can make better decisions and get better results. But if we're not noticing well, we go charging off into the sunset and nothing happens. Just to review, we've got these three types of conflict: story versus story. The problem is not really the problem, and maybe a hidden priority argument where we're nominally discussing something like A or B, it's really about prioritization of the two things. So I purposely have gone really quick. It looks like I have about 6 or 7 minutes left here. Can anybody think of a case of one of these three that you have personally run into?
Yeah, I don't know how much you want to go into politics, but the story versus story seems to be very prevalent these days. So I'm kind of wondering, how do we untangle that?
Yeah. So one of the ways of untangling that is to, for starters, now let's pretend we're not talking about politics, right? Maybe it's a one-on-one or in a group or something like that. And somebody says, well, this is the thing, that's the thing. So development team. They have a performance problem. Something needs to run faster. And one person in the group says, oh, we need to do this. And the other person says, no, obviously we need to do this. Those are both stories. We don't know what's really going on. And so the way to decode it is not to argue about which solution is better, but what were you noticing and how did you get there from the things that we can directly observe, right? And often what will happen is you'll notice that either we're not talking about the same stuff at all, or there's a big gap in what we know about the underpinnings and people are making a big leap of assumption to get to their solution. Does that make sense? Is that helpful?
It is. And it's also, though, there's an underlying emotional content a lot of the times with those things that you need to address as well. Like, somehow we need to have permission to make sure that, like I see the frustration and the venting that occurs with a lot of these things.
Right.
And sometimes that's helpful because then that's letting things out. And sometimes it's just, being stuck. So the question is, the question I hold in my mind is, when do you address it? Yep.
Yeah, the story, you have this emotional connection to the story. It's mine. I believe it. It's part of my, right? This is why this, right. But here's how you pull it apart. Let's say we've got some stuff, some observable stuff that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is. Drop the story discussion. Start here. Can we agree on the observable stuff? And then if two people, even if they have completely divergent stories, if you can get them to at least get to the place where they can accept the idea that there are multiple possible stories to describe what they saw or that motivated what they saw, now we're not in this hard line, my story is the only way. And that's where a lot of the emotion comes from. I've locked myself into my story is the only explanation. If I can get people to open up to the idea there's multiple possible stories here, that then opens the door to the much lower temperature discussion about, okay, what are these choices and what are the possible effects of these choices? And
I agree. I agree with that. I think the other thing is, right, let's get them on the same page about what it is that we're trying to achieve together.
Yeah.
Like, make sure we got a common purpose.
That to me is part of the non-story. You better have some non-story. That's what are we trying to achieve?
Yeah. What's the purpose? Yep.
Right. Because if all of the achievement is a story, it's sort of like the SMART goals. It's right. Well, how do we tell if we got there? We don't know. It's like Alice in Wonderland. It's like, do you know where you want to go? No. Okay, that's fine. Any road will do.
I hope you don't mind me playing in, but I'll be quiet.
No, that's fine.
It's cool.
That's Thanks. Fine. Any other thoughts, reactions, comments, questions?
Well,
I'll put this other page back.
I guess touching a bit on what you were saying, generally speaking, I find that people are more receptive to another idea or not an idea, whichever item that we're discussing or debating, when they have a better understanding of it. A lot of times when you say, well, this is what we're doing, and they don't understand why, that therein lies their defensive and conflict. But if you actually make people understand the breakdown, they're more receptive to it. So
Yeah, and it's actually a skill. These three things I talked about are actually developable skills. They're not hard to pick up. To be able to listen and receive the world in a way that you just in the back of your head can automatically pull this stuff apart. And once you can do that, it gives you much more flexibility, whether it's facilitator, coach, participant, manager, whatever. You get many more choices for how you react. And to your point, Maya, about making sure people agree, many of the times we describe the thing we're trying to do, it's drenched in story. It's almost impossible for somebody to actually know what you're saying. So to your point, yes, once you become more aware of this stuff, you can communicate in a clearer way, which helps people to align better. So there's less of this guesswork and, oh, I thought you meant blah, blah, blah. So I hope this helps.
Yeah. The other thing I'm thinking about is sometimes you have to understand your audience, that particular person, and what it is that their values and things are, right? To try to align better with their way of thinking, to explain it in a way that makes it easier for them to relate to.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Is it? I can't quite see up with the prompter. Asha.
Asha, yep.
Hi. So same thing, like as you explained the situation, I also had came across the situation in like my recent implementation. Like his PO was new and he has written so many stories, but none of them were more like as a user based or like as a business person who is accessing it. It's more like a technical things what they have captured in ACs. And it was very difficult for the QA team to understand what is needs to be tested here because the ACs were not clear and concise, detailed. So finally, like there was a time already they declared that they wanted to implement it in, say, for example, like August. And I was like panic. Like their stories are not clear, no XCs are clear. How would they will test what we will deliver in the timeline, right? So basically, like I'm a QA manager, so I definitely like have a call with these POs and went through each stories, explain them what needs to be captured on a high level to maintain like a consistent ACs in all the stories. And
right.
I think he understood and he revised his stories. And then we are really in a good shape at this moment to release anything if we want to do it in August. So that's definitely a point that we have to have a, common ground to discuss and think about what exactly we need to have to get things delivered. And that really helped each other.
Cool. And that's actually an application. It's an example application of what I'm talking about, where instead of just saying these stories are crap, go come back with better ones.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Yes, absolutely.
That's the story versus story response.
Correct. Okay. No. Yes, you are right. That's based on the application for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So cool. There's plenty more. I just want to invite anybody who'd like to connect. I put my link tree in there. Happy to do what I call just a quick call to meet and greet or whatever topic you want to talk about. I have a small membership to work through these things in detail of a whole bunch more stuff. Thank you very much for the time.
Wow, some great conversations tonight, huh, Peretz? What do you think, Perry? Can you hear me, Perry? Okay, I thought we had some great conversations tonight. So I want to thank all of our speakers tonight. Such great content. Really appreciative.
I found my mute buttons. Yes. So Ken, I will agree with that. I want to thank everybody for their patience and their participation. And I did have one last little bit because we're a bunch of data-driven people. When I set up that question about what was your favorite meeting, I got a total of 11 responses. 3 of them related to retrospectives. That was the most popular one listed on individual item. 4 of them were related to what I think of as requirements or a backlog or dealing with stakeholders. And one mentioned the big room. I think that was you, Ken, the big room meeting. I consider all that kind of setting up requirements. And the 4th one, the 3rd category, or the 3rd type of meeting, had to do with innovation, happy hour meditation. What was the other one? Water cooler. In other words, people working together as a team. So there we go. I think we're about done, right? We're about out.
Yeah.
We got a few more minutes.
So yeah, thanks Jane for talking to us about the best way to stop overwhelm on an Agile project. Thank you, David, for your prompt engineering with ChatGPT. Perry, thanks for leading a meeting as facilitator versus decision maker. And Joel, really appreciate the 3 secrets that turn conflict into collaboration. May set up more time with you to kind of bounce ideas back and forth with you.
Great.
So,
And by the way, for anybody who wants, there's, just ping me. My link, the link tree has my LinkedIn and stuff like that, but I've got a PDF of that I can get you.
Yep. And I kind of talked us through progress rather than spinning just one story of what happened with one leadership team. So thank you all so much for your time. Really appreciate you being here. And for those that attended just to listen, we really appreciate you having you folks here as well. Without you, we wouldn't have a group. So thank you all. Be well and enjoy the rest of your night.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Good to see you all.
everybody. Thanks, Ken.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Good night.